homeopathy is?
I have no idea.
Homeopathy? Nah, I never heard of it.
I don't. It's eating healthy, it's taking herbs and vitamins.
Homeopathy, yeah, of course.
What is it?
Yeah, that is that you touch your body on a weird manner.
Homeopathy is when you dilute water down incredibly much, and then people claim that it is a medicine.
I'm a big fan of homeopathy. It's really saved my life. It stopped me being very depressed. It's put me back on course.
It's a bogus form of medicine.
And, well, scientifically proven not to do that much.
Homeopathy, a system of medicine that's often dismissed today as quackery. Yet once it rivaled and revolutionized the practice of medicine.
I'm giving her arnica.
And it is still used by millions worldwide. Patients swear by it.
The modern healthcare system with drugs is more of a disease management system. It's not a healthcare system. It's not giving health to people. It's managing their disease. And yes, it will prolong life, but the quality of life is that we're on drugs. So if the goal is to have everybody on drugs, there's something wrong with that thinking.
Homeopathy takes a different approach. It uses highly diluted remedies that stimulate the body to heal itself. It treats the whole person, not just the disease. Critics think homeopathy is completely implausible. Not that we don't know how it works, but that we don't know even how it might work. They fear practitioners are charlatans and patients are being fooled.
They have people's lives in their hands. If you make an extraordinary claim, you have to have evidence to back that claim up. And the facts are, the homeopathic community has not provided that evidence.
There's hundreds of thousands of doctors around the world doing this. There are 200 million people using it. Are they all mad?
This is the story of the most controversial system of medicine ever invented. Homeopathy.
Oh, hello and welcome. So come and see the wild things of homeopathy. Lots of what I've got here has been given to me by people who've retired, or it belonged to their grandfather, and so on. This was one of my earliest finds. A really, really small travelling kit for homeopathic medicines. Here's a little book called The Medical Telephone, a homeopathic pharmacy in Hobart, Tasmania. Here is the Samuel Hahnemann Monument in Washington, D.C., a doctor who, in his own lifetime, created a system of medicine which has endured and lasted.
In the late 18th century in Leipzig, Germany, Dr. Hahnemann had a reputation as a brilliant scientist.
Samuel Hahnemann was a doctor in Germany who was disaffected with conventional medicine.
À la fin du 18e siècle, en fait, la médecine est très barbare. On n'imagine pas comment elle est barbare. C'est des saignées à n'en plus finir, c'est de l'emploi de doses massives d'arsenic, de mercure. En fait, on rend les gens plus malades qu'ils ne le sont quand ils sont malades.
At the end of the 18th century, doctors were using toxic plants of all kinds mixed up together according to their ideas. And Hahnemann found this totally drastic. He was very intent on helping people, not killing people.
Dr. Hahnemann smoked his pipe from morning till night, deeply absorbed in thought.
The thought of becoming a murderer towards the life of my fellow human beings was terrible to me.
He gave up practicing medicine and used his literary skills to support his large family.
In time, Serious illnesses endangered the lives of my children, my flesh and blood, and there was no means on which I could rely for affording them relief.
Hahnemann felt sure that God must have ordained a method for healing the sick, and he was determined to find it. In 1790, when Hahnemann was translating a medical textbook, something caught his attention. The text stated that quinine, a remedy made from Peruvian bark, cures malarial fever because it is bitter.
Hahnemann had a great knowledge of various types of herbs during that period, and he knew that there were many other things which were bitter and astringent. That wouldn't be a good argument for why it would be effective in the treatment of malaria.
So he said, I've got to look into this.
As an experiment, Hahnemann ingested quinine over several days to see what would happen.
My feet, fingers, hands first became cold. My heart began to palpitate. I discontinued it and was in good health.
Eureka! This was the moment in the history of science much overlooked. Malaria could be cured by quinine because it causes something like it.
Hahnemann concluded, if a substance is capable of causing harm, it is also capable of curing. This principle of let like, treat like became the cornerstone of his new system of medicine.
This is basically like a vaccine. You give a small quantity of what makes the person sick, and the body reacts and heals itself.
Inspired by his experiment with quinine, he continued to do what he called provings or testings on himself and his family, using a variety of substances that he found in pharmacies and in nature. Dr. Hahnemann meticulously documented his findings. When the toxicity of the remedies produced unwanted side effects, Dr. Hahnemann began watering them down and vigorously shaking them. To his surprise, this combination of diluting and shaking made the remedies more effective. Hahnemann named his new system of medicine homeopathy. He called conventional medicine allopathy. His colleagues ridiculed his findings, which didn't make any sense to them. Dr. Hahnemann was convinced he had found a way to relieve the suffering of humanity. Modern medicine has come a long way since the 1800s, yet there are still many diseases for which conventional medicine has few cures. Homeopathy is used to treat a wide variety of illnesses, from simple colds and coughs to serious chronic conditions.
Okay, Jenny, nice to meet you. Come in. What else?
Most people find themselves in a homeopath's office when conventional medicine has failed them.
At the age of 13, I came down with Lyme disease. The remedies that she gave me ultimately gave me my life back.
I went to see this amazing woman who asked me an hour and a half or 2 hours worth of ridiculous questions. She then went into a cupboard and did something and came out and gave me a couple of pills. And I essentially have never had hay fever again.
My career was going to come to a halt at some point. It was really painful. I could barely, the stiffness when you're a musician is not really good for the, on the hands. I consulted a rheumatologist and they said there's not much we can do for you, unfortunately. I went to see a homeopath doctor and it took a little bit of time. It eventually disappeared completely. Now I can play.
I'm a cinematographer. I was on a shoot in an apple orchard. I went to remove a vine out of the shot, and it might have pricked my finger. That night, I felt something under the skin. It turned into an angry red infection. I went into a walk-in clinic and took oral antibiotics that the doctor prescribed for me, and by 3 days later, it just wasn't getting better.
The
is Dr. Vitale. I know you had an abscess on your finger, which you sent some labs off on, and it shows that the bacteria that you have is not sensitive to the antibiotics we've been giving you. So I hope you're checking your message. You should come to the ER as soon as possible.
They had cultured it. They found out it was MRSA. And when I talked to the doctor, I was like, well, what is that? Kind of rang a bell.
MRSA, or methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, is also called the superbug because it cannot be cured with a normal dose of antibiotics. Mark was put in isolation because MRSA is highly infectious. His doctors treated him with powerful antibiotics.
I think another day or so of the IV vancomycin.
I figured it was behind me. About a month later, I felt something on the back of my leg. And I thought, maybe it's the return of the MRSA.
Mark calls me one evening saying, I have MRSA, can you do something about it? It's a very strong bug, and that bug will kill you. I said, go to the hospital, at least to get it cleansed. And he said, if I go to the hospital, they will keep me.
Pierre had to change the dosages, tried a few different remedies until he found the right one.
Knowing how lethal this is, there's one night where I really could not sleep at all.
I was concerned for my life, but at the same time, I was confident that I would actually be worse shape if I went back to the hospital. I kept checking my fever. It was maybe low grade, but it wasn't out of control. And I got through it. It started to heal.
You're going to hear very impressive stories about people being treated with life-threatening infections with homeopathic remedies. You can think about it in two ways. From one perspective, you could say, yeah, there's lots of other things that could have been going on. We don't know for sure that the diagnosis was correct. No, diagnostic tests are not 100%. You also don't know what would have happened had that individual treatment not been given. We have immune systems. We can fight off infections. It happens.
Within 6 to 7 days, we were out of the woods.
Hey, Mark, just I'm looking at your picture here. Very good. It's great. It's a big improvement.
We have culture before and culture after. There is no MRSA, period.
Homeopathy, how does it work? We don't know. A homeopathic medicine does not heal per se. It doesn't cure you. It doesn't cure your symptoms. It acts as a catalyst for healing.
I really don't understand why they're keeping asking me that. Because if you talk with the conventional doctor, he doesn't know how an allopathic remedy does work.
I was in medical school. With the typical arrogance of all medical students, I knew what could be cured and what couldn't. And I received this magazine, and in it, there happened to be an article about all the amazing cures with homeopathy. I thought it was a bunch of baloney. I tossed the magazine away. And then in the middle of the night, for reasons I have no idea, I sat straight up and thought, what if that were true? It's only after you see it happening in person after person after person that you start to realize the power of homeopathy to change lives, not just to change symptoms.
When we catch a cold, when we get flu, when we cut ourselves, we heal. It's the natural state of our body is to heal and repair. And when people get chronic illness, whether it's arthritis, whether it's asthma, somehow that healing power has been turned off. The body cannot get back its balance, its equilibrium, and heal itself. And what homeopathy does is it provides the impetus for the body to heal itself. So in a sense, it's not the homeopathy that's doing the work. The homeopathy provides the impetus for the body to do its own work.
I specifically remember the doctor telling us, they have 10 toes, 10 fingers, everything looks good, developing perfect. In retrospect, I realized, 10 fingers and 10 toes, give me the 9 fingers.
I don't think anybody could have been happier than I was to be pregnant.
Hi, honey.
Hello.
This is a video diary. Your pregnancy. This is you at 6 months.
Hold on, let's turn to the side so we can get a view.
I'll pull this up so you
Look at that. Mommy looks like an Oompa Loompa.
Okay, Lucas, this is where you are today. The big belly, there's a little boy in there. Got 5 more weeks to go. What time did this start? 9?
It started
9:30
probably
when water broke?
about 9:30. No, actually it started right about 10 after 9 because we were watching The Apprentice. Diamonds. I'm going to get you big diamonds in platinum. Lucas Jacob Korn, 6 pounds, 7 ounces, born exactly, I don't know, what was the time? I'm still putting you in. We kept saying to ourselves, like, are we, like, prepared to have this kid? Like, is this really ours? Are people actually letting us leave with him?
We're tired parents, but just thrilled.
Oh my God.
He sat on time, he crawled on time, he rolled over on time, he had eye contact.
Lucas. Hey, hi.
He was pretty normal at that time, pretty typical. And then maybe a few months later, you know, it was like 3-4 months, and we were like, oh, you know, he's really not starting to sleep yet.
Around 12 months, we started to have some real concerns.
His eye contact just stopped. He didn't have any. He didn't look at us. He didn't answer to his name.
Lucas. Lucas. He's like staring into space.
I knew he had autism. When Lucas was diagnosed that day, I felt like everything in life had slipped away in one moment.
It was as if someone had just told us, like, okay, I'm pulling the floor out from underneath you. You're going to fall down to the basement. But here's a sticky pad with the name of a speech therapist. And that's going to make it okay. And I remember taking the number. And I was like, is there anything else we should do? Who do we talk to?
I researched every day, every night, every minute of the day. And I found different things that I thought could help my son.
You do.
Everything helped a little bit. He was still autistic, and he still had very abnormal behaviors. I was starting to give up hope at that time. You know, he's almost 5 years old, he's not talking. They tell you if they don't talk by 5, 6, forget it, they're never gonna talk. He's never gonna be able to talk. He's not gonna be able to take care of himself. He's never gonna have eye contact. My son is never gonna look at me. He's never gonna know how much I love him. He's never gonna know how much I love him. That was the loss that I felt, and it was extreme. I especially had a bad day. I prayed that night. I was just crying and crying and crying, and got down on my knees and prayed to God to help me find the way, any way, to help my son. I got on the internet the next day, and I found Dr. Luke.
When people come to me with their children, they have tried about everything you can mention that is at this point in vogue for the treatment of autism spectrum disorder. When you have tried all this, you want to have posed yourself the question, why would I even try homeopathy? Because first of all, homeopathy is based on a totally different premise. We really take into account the whole mental, emotional, physical picture. So it's the individualistic approach that is a big plus point for homeopathy.
He just listened, and he just let me tell him everything that happened. And then he said, oh, you know, I have a remedy to begin. It was very surreal. Like, even making a remedy, there's nothing in it. It's like a tiny little Saclac pill, and you put it in, I mean, it's really small, like the size of a poppy seed. And you put it in water, and then you take one drop from that, and you put it in another thing of water, and then you take one drop of water and you put it on Lucas's tongue. I mean, when I first started doing it, I was really like, how could this could possibly not, I couldn't believe. It would be very hard to believe that if somebody just saw it. Tongue out. I saw a change from the first time I gave him remedy. As soon as I gave it to him, his eye contact came back. Good looking. Lucas, give me the ball. Thank you! I saw it right away. And I was like, let me second guess. Like, I started to second guess myself. Like, well, maybe it was something else. Or maybe it's just a fluke. He got better for a few days. He seems a little bit better today. He's a little bit more related, his eye contact. But he's not cured, so I'll just keep going and we'll see if this really is something.
Try again.
Homeopathy, it doesn't have any plausibility. It's basically nothing. It's been diluted out of existence to the point where there's no active ingredient left. Not a small dose, no dose.
Most of the pharmaceutical agents that we know work, we know why they work. We know that they do get absorbed through the gut. We know that they're carried by the bloodstream to a particular receptor on a cell. So we know the mechanism. I think the reason that many scientists are skeptical about homeopathy is we don't know the mechanism. It seems just like magic.
For over 200 years, scientists have debated how homeopathy could possibly work. The main reason why homeopathy is so controversial is because of the preparation of the remedies. These remedies have been made all over the world, according to Hahnemann's direction, over 200 years ago.
In a nutshell, you're taking a raw material, whether it's a plant, a mineral, or even sometimes an animal, and you start off by making an extract of that, and then there's a process of diluting it in a substance, alcohol and water. And the succussion part, the noise you can hear is the shaking with an impact. Well, succussion is a word that does have some history, and it just means shaking but with a bang.
Succussion is essential to activate the medicine. Many homeopathic remedies are diluted to the point where there is not even a single molecule left of the original substance. Just one drop of this solution is put into a bottle of sugar pills, creating the remedy.
Homeopathy must be quite the daftest form of alternative medicine that exists. I'm really quite surprised that anyone thinks it's worth talking about, for the very simple reason that there's nothing in the tablets. That's a consequence of Avogadro's number.
Amadeo Avogadro was a contemporary of Hahnemann who figured out at what point in dilution you would have less than a molecule, and the mathematics worked out to 10 to the minus 23.
To give you an idea of Avogadro's number, if you were to put one drop in the ocean, stir the oceans of the earth, and take one drop back, that would be a dilution equivalent to Avogadro's number. So if you dilute a substance long enough, if you have high enough dilutions, you will not have a single molecule left of your original substance. So in a way, how can you expect any effect from a substance that is so diluted that there's not a single atom left of the original substance?
These stunt people decided to call themselves 1023 and stand outside certain pharmacies and take a bottle of homeopathic medicine to prove there's nothing in it.
Skeptics from across 30 countries took part in what they called a mass homeopathic overdose demonstration to protest the sale of homeopathic remedies.
So, it is now 10:23.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Homeopathy, there's nothing here!
One can't overdose on a bottle of homeopathic medicine. One pill or one bottle of pills is still one dose, and if it's not the right remedy, it won't work for you at all.
They don't taste as good as Smarties, but they're sweet nevertheless.
Mine tastes like chalk.
Down the hatch, you're gone.
The skeptics movement is devoted to debunking homeopathy. Its favorite platform is the internet.
Hello, I'm James Randi, and I'm here to help celebrate World Homeopathy Awareness Week. The acronym for that is WA, a week during which the practitioners of and believers in the delusion known as homeopathy wish to draw our attention to that variety of quackery.
The royal family have always used homeopathy and have made no secret of the fact that they have used homeopathy.
Long live the Queen.
I think that does make people think, crikey, well, it's doing all right for them, and also if it works for them, it might work for me.
The fact that the royal family uses homeopathy, and indeed the Prince of Wales advocates an integrated approach to medicine, of course that is a plus. But actually what drives it is that people find that it works for them. That is what makes it survive.
In the United Kingdom, homeopathy has been an integral part of the National Health Service, the NHS, for over half a century.
I've personally always been a very good supporter of homeopathy, and I use the remedies and I keep them in my pocket actually. This is the homeopathic remedy kit, 36 remedies, and I think I save our National Health Service a fortune.
But now, funding for homeopathy in the UK is under threat of being cut.
The controversy here in England has been going on certainly over the last 10 years, but gathering pace, and in the last couple of years it's become really quite vitriolic and vindictive.
Opponents feel consumers need to be warned. They believe homeopathy is purely a placebo effect.
Homeopathy is under huge attack from a very highly organised, well-funded, very good anti-homeopathy lobby. You have to admire them. They know what they're doing, and it's very effective. And I think frequently that if I didn't know what I know about homeopathy, if I didn't know how well it works with my patients, how well it's worked for me, how well I've seen it work in animals, in babies, in children, where I can see that it's not placebo effect, I would believe these people who say it's rubbish.
It would be self-evidently false to say a pill which contains nothing can cure you of anything. It's very simple. I realised that there were 5 British universities that ran Bachelor of Science degrees in homeopathy, which I just could not believe. It's so ludicrous. Something which is so profoundly anti-scientific, I became rather shocked when I retired from full-time science. Blogs became available, so I had a way to express those views. And indeed, it was very effective. All those degrees are now shut down.
I can understand why skeptics are skeptical. There appears to be a good reason why it can't possibly work, which is that very high dilutions are frequently used. And this does seem very odd, and yet it does work. It wouldn't have hung around for 200 years. It wouldn't be spreading all over the world. It wouldn't be supported actually by quite a lot of research if that were not the truth.
In London, scientists Alex Tournier and Rachel Roberts run the Homeopathy Research Institute, founded to address the need for rigorous scientific investigations into homeopathy.
The debate is raging about whether homeopathy works or not, and the only way to put that debate to rest is to get sufficiently good trials done that there is no argument anymore. We know it works or it doesn't work. We know it works for this or not for that, and we have those answers. Question is...
I consider myself a scientist first and foremost, and I'm curious. I think that's what drove me to science, is curiosity. What happened to me is, through personal health reasons, I had an encounter with homeopathy as a last resort. I had chronic fatigue at the time, and I tried pretty much everything under the sun. And homeopathy was by far one of the least impressive medicines I had encountered. So I was like, not impressed, tried it, and then it went, whoa, something happened, something I didn't expect, something I didn't think could happen. And it made me think, wait a minute, I need to find out a bit more about this because I don't understand this. And this is, for me, the starting point, this I don't understand this, the curiosity, which is at the driving force of the scientific process for me. After having worked 10 years for Cancer Research UK in London, a major cancer research charity, I decided to follow my passion and go for homeopathy research, because I really believe there's something there to discover.
Dr. Alex Tournier.
Alex and Rachel organized a groundbreaking meeting at the House of Commons for members of Parliament, people from the National Health Service, and homeopaths to discuss the need for more research.
Homeopathy is one of the few subjects, the mere mention of which can alter people's perception of you within seconds. Mention the word, and within the briefest of moments, whatever credibility and reputation for objectivity you had will evaporate suddenly. Today, well over 200 million people use homeopathy worldwide. Bearing in mind it was discovered only 200 years ago, the fact that it is so widely used today should make us pause. If homeopathy really is all placebo, then shouldn't we find out why so many people still choose to use it? Homeopathy has been shown to be efficacious in 8 clinical conditions in placebo-controlled trials. If it is just placebo, then how can that be?
In 2010, the Australian government decided to take on this question about the effectiveness of homeopathy. In one of the most ambitious reviews of the evidence to date, the National Health and Medical Research Council, the NHMRC, began by identifying more than 1,800 scientific studies on homeopathy. 5 years later, they released their findings.
The evidence is clear. When homeopathy is tested against placebo or tested against other types of treatments, it doesn't show any benefit, and that is essentially what we've shown.
The world press ran with the story. The fallout was immediate and devastating around the globe. This report posed a serious threat to homeopathy. Jerry Dendrinos worked in the health sector for the Australian government for several years. He suspected this report might not be free from bias, and he wanted to get to the bottom of it. Through the Australian Freedom of Information Act, Jerry obtained documents.
Homeopathy is one subject in the biomedical field that generates very polarized views. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but let's see what the evidence says. Let's suspend our judgment.
What we wanted to do was to apply our standard, come to this without any conclusion, look at the evidence, but only look at strong scientific evidence and put the position to the Australian public and allow them to judge for themselves.
Which is a different thing. As it's jury, and we know
In London, Alex and Rachel are working with Jerry to help with his investigation of the Australian report.
I wouldn't mind putting something in the next e-newsletter as a news item saying, jury is doing this, if you want to sign up, you know.
Honestly, I probably wasn't prepared for the extent of the animosity that has been directed against homeopathy. We've seen in the media a lot of attacks, very directed attacks with little knowledge of the facts.
When we looked at the Australian report and you see a document changing attitudes and actually changing access to a medicine,
You have to take a long, hard look at that piece of work and check that it is rigorous and check that it's been done properly, because people's lives are being affected by it.
Wonderful. That sounds that feels really powerful when you describe what you're doing. That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Good.
it's
Yeah.
still sort of information gathering, but it's getting clearer, isn't it? I think it's going to start writing.
Slowly taking shape. It is.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Like 2 days ago, we had 2 days yesterday. 2 days ago, really realization of how much power has gone into hiding the facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I mean, it's intense. I mean, nobody knows what has happened here.
We took a very good look at the Australian report, all, I think, 600 pages of the documentation that we were given. Because it's our job, day in, day out, at our institute, to know what evidence is out there. They said, we are going to look at all of the existing evidence for, I think it was 61 named diseases. So we thought, interesting, they're going to find the great studies we have on childhood diarrhea. They're going to find the really strong studies on hay fever. So, you know, I picked up the document, went straight to the chapters for those conditions, and they said, we have no reliable evidence it's effective. Immediately alarm bells go off, because you're thinking, how did they not find them?
The expert group looked at the entire bunch of evidence, the entire bunch, not selectively picking this. That's a study, forget the rest. Now, of course, there are people, as there are with all our guidelines, there are people who think a different conclusion should have been brought. And if you're a practitioner, whether it's a homeopathy or anything else, surgeon, cardiologist, if the conclusion affects you, of course you're going to be upset, try and find what's the basis of the report. Evidence is the bulk of evidence.
Jerry discovered it was not only those in the homeopathic community who disagreed with this conclusion. The NHMRC sought independent peer review from the Australasian Cochrane Centre, which advised NHMRC that no reliable evidence does not seem an accurate reflection of the body of evidence. A substantial proportion of small but good quality studies show significant differences in favor of homeopathy.
If you think about it, if they allowed even one study to be reported that was positive, in a sense that would be an admission that homeopathy can work.
NHMRC ignored the advice of the independent review and did not disclose this to the Australian community. In the summer of 1799, a deadly outbreak of scarlet fever raged through the village of Königslutter, where Samuel Hahnemann lived. Conventional medicine was failing. Many were dying.
People became very, very red. Red in the face, red in the body, huge fevers. And he says, this resembles this plant that I know, belladonna.
Years earlier, Dr. Hahnemann tested remedies made from belladonna on healthy people and observed their reactions. He felt confident that this would be the right remedy to treat the particular symptoms of scarlet fever.
And he went from house to house with his little vial and put it in water and said, give it not just to the sick children, give it to the other children who are not yet sick. And nobody died anymore. And that was the first time an epidemic of scarlet fever was cured. So it was magnificent. It was the first big cure of homeopathy.
For the next 2 decades, Dr. Hahnemann continued to experiment, successfully treating a variety of illnesses and the testing of 99 remedies. In 1810,